Matt, thanks very much indeed. What is next on the magic sheet?
It says something about the highway code.
Should we do that then?
Yeah, let's do that. We sometimes disobey the sheep, then we get in trouble. A revised highway code comes into force on Saturday, meaning drivers will have more responsibility to watch out for people who are cycling, walking or riding a horse.
Now, the new rules also come with tougher fines. You're laughing at the horse.
No, I'm just interested about the rules.
You might be riding a horse.
We've all got to pay attention to these
have got to
rules.
you've got to really pay attention because you could get fined if you don't obey these rules. More points for drivers who don't follow them. Katie Austin explains how it's all going to work.
Captured on camera. Collisions. Close shaves. And scary moments across the country. London's cyclist Mike campaigns for road safety. He says those sorts of incidents happen far too often.
What are the most common problems you come across?
So the most common ones boil down to impatience, which is maybe overtaking too close and then immediately stopping in a queue of traffic, or overtaking me and then turning left across my path, forcing me to brake.
Cutting across?
Cutting across from coming in the opposite direction.
And what's that like, when you're cycling? What does it feel like?
It's frightening. We don't want to have anything like that. I have no protection against a motor vehicle.
Guidance is about to be put into the highway code, saying at least 1.5 metres should be left when overtaking a cyclist, 2 metres when overtaking a horse.
But that's not all. Some other changes to the highway code are due to come in soon, including some things drivers really need to know about. I've come to a car testing track to get, who else, a driving instructor to explain. This brings back memories.
All pleasant ones, I hope.
Well, I passed eventually. All right for me to get in?
Yes.
Road users who can cause the most harm, drivers of big lorries for example, will have the most responsibility for safety, and there'll be more priority for pedestrians and cyclists at junctions.
So coming up to the junction, check my mirrors, indicate left. I've got to give way if there's a pedestrian already crossing the road. Is that going to change under the new guidance?
New guidance is that if there's someone waiting to cross, you must stop in this hold back position.
So even though they haven't actually started, I'm going to wait here now until they've actually crossed the road?
Correct.
What about cyclists as well?
You must allow them to pass and go straight ahead before we proceed.
OK.
With no cyclists wanting to go ahead of me and the pedestrian gone, I turn in to the next road. And remember we mentioned how much space you should give a bike? Well, here's me giving a dummy cyclist about 1.5 metres. Walking and cycling groups back the updates, but there are concerns not many people know about them.
General public are not aware of these changes and how they're going to affect them as road users. If you're not given the information in the first place and it's not easy to find, then it's going to be difficult for people to understand the new rules.
Reach across with your opposite arm and hold on to the door handle.
There will also be guidance on looking over your shoulder when opening a car door to avoid doing this. Campaigners hope updated guidance will help to drive change and make the most vulnerable safer, if that is, people follow the rules. Katie Austin, BBC News.
Let's find out a little bit more about this because we can speak now to the president of the AA, Edmund King, and to Stephen Edwards from the charity Living Streets. Thank you very much to the pair of you for being with us this morning. Mr. King, let's come to you first of all. These are important changes, aren't they? I just wonder how many of our viewers this morning are aware these are coming in.
Yeah, I think these are very important cultural changes about how we share our roads between all road users. And I think that's a very important and positive step. We did a survey in December of 13,000 drivers, and only a third had heard that there were some changes. We then followed up this month in January, did a further survey of about 14,000 drivers. And again, the majority, even if they'd heard about the changes, they didn't really know what the changes are. And obviously, if we look back in the past at major campaigns for compulsory seatbelts or the breathalyzer, we had big campaigns before that legislation was introduced, whereas here, the government Think campaign only starts in a few weeks after the legislation's introduced. And that's a bit of a concern because, you know, as in Katie Austin's piece, if the driver isn't aware that the pedestrian has priority at a junction, that could lead to some conflict on the roads.
And Stephen, you're from a charity that campaigns for pedestrians' rights. I imagine some of these changes, which prioritise pedestrians a little more, are the sorts of things you've been campaigning for.
Completely. These are really, really important changes to the philosophy at the heart of the Highway Code. At the moment, the Highway Code treats people walking to school and lorry drivers as equivalent in the harm they can cause, which is not right. A quarter of the kind of deaths we see on our roads are pedestrian deaths, so it's right that the Highway Code shifts. Aside from that important change to philosophy at the heart of the Highway Code, there are some significant changes to individual rules, such as the rule on priority for pedestrians crossing the road, mentioned in your piece. So yeah, we're really supportive of these measures and looking forward to them coming into force on Saturday.
Edmund, there's lots of people watching now be thinking, OK, I'll try and get my head around these. From a motorist point of view, what's the most important thing to be aware of?
Well, I think the most important things are, really being more forgiving to other road users. So, it just makes it incredibly clear that if you are overtaking cyclists, you should only do it when it's safe to do, give 1.5 metre gap. And I do also think the rules about horse riders, slowing down to less than 10 miles an hour and giving a 2 metre gap. And even driving along, if there are pedestrians and there's no pavement, again, you should slow down and give a 2 metre gap. Now, many of these things actually are common sense. I actually went out yesterday on my bike testing them, and I did see a truck give way to pedestrians who wanted to cross at a junction, and to cyclists. I did see cyclists giving way to pedestrians. So a lot of responsible road users do follow these kind of rules. But I think what this does, it formalises it, it introduces it into the Highway Code so that a new generation of drivers who are learning to drive will hopefully accept to be more forgiving, more inclusive, and hopefully we can create better harmony on the roads for all road users.
Yeah, and on that issue, Stephen, we all know the name of Chris Boardman, who's recently been announced as the head of Active Travel England, and ministers are pledging £5.5 million of investment, I think, into cycling and into walking as well. Where would you like to see some of that money allocated? What do we need?
So first of all, Active Travel England is a real game changer for walking and cycling infrastructure in the UK. And we at Living Streets are really, really looking forward to working with Chris Boardman as he takes forward its important work in the months to come. It's really important that Active Travel England does prioritise inclusive infrastructure for pedestrians and for walking as they take forward their mission there. And for us, this means prioritising better quality, wider pavements. It means looking at better crossing facilities on our roads. And it means looking at creating more spaces with fewer vehicles, so we can all walk kind of in a kind of safe, more considered way.
I suppose, Edmund, the age-old problem is a bad driver is a bad driver, isn't it?
Well, I think that is part of the problem. And I think the other part of it is, very few people look at the Highway Code unless they're actually learning to take their test. And that's why better campaigning on this is very important. But really, I think, there is one simple message, and that is for all road users, be more forgiving. If you're in a truck, you can cause more damage than a car or a van or a cycle or a horse. So, think about the consequences of your action. And you're quite right. It all comes down to safer driving. And that's what the Highway Code is trying to implement. So, yes, look out for other road users and slow down, be forgiving.
Edmund King, Stephen Edwards, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much for that. It's one of those stories that basically comes down to just being a bit nicer and thinking of other
sensible.
people. It's like litter, isn't it?
Also being patient.
Yeah.
Be more patient on the road.
Don't be a donut. There you go.